I made a thing. Ha! What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OG GM, coming to you live from the bustling metropolis of Hemettville, Texas. Because, yes, I decided Wretched Vigilantes takes place in a city in Texas. We're going to take a look at this. Bad Guys Always Lose, currently available PDF on the Red Room for, I think, $9. Hopefully a POD will be out soon. It'll be around 20, I'm hoping, not too more than 20 than that, because I personally don't think it's worth more than 20, and I made it. So yeah, this is the first supplement to the Wretched Vigilantes world that I created with Miguel from Red Room. Thank you, Sylvia and Miguel, for letting me play around in the world of Wretched and create with you Wretched Vigilantes. So obviously, whenever you write a superhero role-playing game and you put it out there, the first thing you're thinking is, how do I expand upon it? What do people want to see? So I asked, what people want to see? Do you want to see an expansion? Do you want to see me do more in the world? And there was definitely, yes, people wanted to see more. And they wanted to see more of the world. Wanted to see more of the characters. And, we wanted to explore how this idea of these less than noble superheroes and less than villainous supervillains, these wretched take on the classic street level supers, expanded. I mean, the one question that came out was, is Hemettville the only place in the world where these guys exist? Now, obviously, the Wretched Vigilantes world is maybe slightly askew of the standard Wretched world, but if you look at the Wretched timeline of Wretched Earth, there's obviously superpowers of the supernatural and psychic existing. Wretched Conspiracy, Wretched Darkness, Wretched New Flesh, even Epoch, all suggest that there is a wider world, that, the corporations in Wretched New Flesh have been experimenting in bioenhancement. So it wasn't that too far of a leap to start creating the world of Wretched Vigilantes, but I wanted to explore it more. So let's take a look at this, because it's out. It's available. Multiple links down below. Buy my merch. Thank you, Sylvia and Miguel from the Red Room, for letting me play around in the universe of Wretched. And let's take a look at this, which came out a couple days ago. So on the cover, we have our girl Edge. This one is definitely, I was thinking, like, who is the author? Who is the narrator? Who is telling these? And obviously the first applicant for the position would have been Candy. She's immortal. I was thinking that all these would have been told from the future, from Candy telling the history of the Wretched universe. But as I got done finishing Wretched Vigilantes, and started writing Bad Guys Always Lose, I thought, yeah, no, I don't really think she's not really the author of these. So then I thought, oh, well, it's probably Edge. She's sitting at the middle. She's the spider at the center of the web. And Bad Guys Always Loses, definitely, written. She is the main sort of impetus, and Bad Guys Always Lose. But again, I was like, no, I don't think she's the author. So I'm working on the second one, which is Good Guys Never Win. And it's obviously told from the point of view a lot of Tag, who's probably my favorite NPC that I created for Wretched Vigilantes, at least for the villains. Is she the author? So Tag might be the author, but I think also the author might be Gadget Girl. Maybe she's writing all these, but it's definitely one of the characters in Wretched Vigilantes is the author. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not Kid Sidekick / the Owl. I have got plans for him that aren't going to be great, that might show up in issue number 3 or issue number 2 or issue number 3. Should it goes that way. So I'm going to tell you I'm telling you right now who it's not. most of the characters in Wretched Vigilantes are not the author. It's basically down to Gadget Girl, Tag, or Candy. Most likely are the females who wrote it, or it could be somebody we haven't met yet. Yeah. So, anyways, so let's call a spade a spade. Let's address the first thing. There are some horrible editing and typo mistakes in here. Some of them are so basic, I don't know how I missed them, and I don't know how Miguel missed them. Some of them are a little harder. But there are some horrible, horrible, horrible spelling mistakes and editing mistakes and some typos in here. So let's address that. And we'll go for the most obvious one. This, the back of the book. This is literally just a copy of the front and putting it on the back. This is not what I would put on the back of a book to get people to go and look inside, especially since this is what's right in the inside. So I would have put something different on the back, but I was lazy. I think towards the end, I should have been more impetus in telling Miguel how I wanted it to think. And obviously there is the communication difference. We're communicating through email. There's a time delay. There's a language difference. Even though we both technically speak English, it's very hard to understand what I write, because what I picture in my head and what goes out into the world are usually two drastically different things. Anybody who's been watching my videos for the past 5 years should know that what I think and what I say are usually two drastic things. So I would have liked the back to look different. There are some just horrible editing mistakes in here, but that's more my fault than Miguel's. I should have been more gone through them again more than once, maybe had somebody else edit them. I mean, I am paying Kyla to edit my stuff. So, but yeah, there's a lot of mistakes in here. Hopefully I will be better at catching them in the second one. I don't know how to do this. Okay. I don't know how to do layouts and stuff like that. So this was all me. All Miguel did was edit it and lay it out. So yeah. You know how I feel about these all black things right here. Just your print. My printer cries every time I see something like this. So we've got the introduction, which I try and explain the secret history of the Wretched super world and how it connects to the rest of the Wretched world. Where do these powers come from? Where did the idea come from? Were there super beings that existed before the timeline of Wretched Vigilantes, which I think I need to rewrite the timeline for Wretched Vigilantes because it doesn't make sense time-wise. Because, that means kid's sidekick is like 54 years old. So yeah. So basically I go through the generic superhero timeline and attach it to the Wretched Vigilantes world with the mentions of like Reset and Takeda and Warden and stuff like that. So, and then I have this, and this is how I wanted to, I mentioned this in Wretched Vigilantes, how this started. And this is based upon an idea of my friend Barry Osser gave me years and years and years ago from a short-lived supervillain campaign that we ran. So the whole history of how superheroes kind of starts is that, in the early 80s, there was a live action kids show. If any of you are familiar with Electra Woman and Dyna Girl or, 1966 Batman or the early Wonder Woman or Isis, anything like that, there was the Sid and Marty Krofft live action sort of comedy super ones. So what if a group of supervillains thought that characters on the TV show were actual superheroes, and they decided the way to make a name for themselves was to attack these superheroes on live TV, but it turns out they're just actors in suits. So that is how things sort of start. It starts with a very wretched, with basically live TV, millions of kids all over the United States watch as these villains burst into the studios in CBS and kill these actors who are wearing these suits. So this is known as the Saturday Sentinel Slaughter. And this is how the whole sort of storyline starts, that we're watching this on live TV and we're sort of also announcing to the world that these superpowered beings are there. You can't deny them anymore. And that is probably the kernel in the back of Warden's mind when he's looking at the situation in Hammetville going, what can I do to save my city? And then he sees these superpowers. And he knows that superpowers exist because he's experimented in psychics, but now here are people in costumes, and he's like, yes, that. And then we just sort of move through the history, like the alien invasion years, and what happened to all the aliens, and are there still any aliens on the planet? We've got the whole thing about the Vanguard Project and, the Vigilantes Project and what went wrong with the Vanguard Project. And of course, it's Edge. Edge is what was the impetus for everything going wrong in Hammetville, leading to the situation where it is today, as explained in Wretched Vigilantes. And then there we go. So we have like, where do the powers come from? Mutations, aliens, human experimentations, like what Reset is doing. Supernatural, because we know a huge theme of normal Wretched is like the body horror and the supernatural, and the sacrifices that people are willing to make for the powers. I really want to get more into that in this one, because we really didn't explore the whole, I cut off my arm to replace it with a monkey's arm to give me my super strength, and that exists in this world. Then where is Hemmettville? So we knew Hemmettville was on a coast. And I think most people just sort of like, oh, it's on the East Coast with Newark. But I was like, no, it's not on the East Coast and it's not on the West Coast, because there's no way you could get away with the stuff that was going on in Hemmettville in the East or West Coast, because insurance and OSHA and all that other stuff. It had to be someplace that was a red state, that guns were okay, that was a little bit more lax on things like OSHA and HEPA and the EPA, and it had to have a coast, which basically left Texas. And I was like, well, Texas is a huge technological boom. Most people don't realize Texas has a coast. Texas, obviously, pro guns, very conservative. Things like, OSHA, probably not as big there as they would be in the Southern California, where if you look at somebody wrong, you're violating an OSHA or a HEPA thing. So I was like, yes, it has to be in Texas. Plus, Texas is big enough that stuff could go on and maybe people wouldn't notice. Like, if it's a small town in the middle of nowhere in Texas. So yes, Hemmettville's in Texas. So congratulations, Texas. You are the epicenter of superheroes and supervillains in the United States. And then I redid all the powers and how they were divided. I added some new perks. I revised the enhanced abilities because they didn't feel super heroic enough to me. I revised a lot of the super skill groups, like, Super Climber and Great Leaps. I moved a lot of stuff around. I added a bunch of new powers, of course, hyper running, hyper digging, hyper swimming, life support. I changed a lot of stuff around that was originally in Wretched and Wretched Vigilantes. I added a lot of new powers. If you guys are looking for new powers, I wanted to acknowledge the fact that there is other stuff going on in the Wretched universe, and in Wretched New Flesh and in Wretched Conspiracy and Wretched Darkness, we have things like the subcusses and the vampires and the aliens. So what would be a cool superpower, I thought, but people whose legacy is they are somehow related to a vampire, and it expresses itself in a way that is relevant to the world of super. So I added these things like the legacies, and then just some classic ones. Stretching, of course, because you got to have stretching. Water breathing, because you got to have water breathing. Changed some other stuff, added some new stuff, changed a lot of the like electrokinesis and stuff like that. Added stuff, changed. Mostly it just changed and added new things, revised things, added some new disadvantages. There's going to be way more new disadvantages in the issue number 2. And then, of course, we get to the most important part, the NPCs. This is what everybody wants with a superhero expansion. You want to see characters in the world. So first we, of course, do the very first supervillain team, the Terrors. The Terrors, of course, a loving homage to the Crushers from Crisis at Crusader Citadel. The Terrors are my Wretched Vigilantes take on the Crushers from Crisis at Citadel. It tells the original Terrors, who were the supervillains who attacked the television show. And then the new Terrors, who are all sort of homages to characters from Crisis at Crusader Citadel. And they're made up of Mrs. World, who is a former beauty contestant who got superhuman strength. She's sort of based upon Bull. We've got Dr. Wasp, who is one of my favorite villains I made. I gotta say, both Miguel and I tried to get Dr. Wasp to look the way I pictured him in my brain, and neither of us could get AI to look like it. So if you've ever seen Candyman, and with Mr. Todd, and he's got opens his mouth and all the bees come out, that was the image I wanted for Dr. Wasp. I wanted this guy to look like a walking wasp hive, that wasps were coming out of his mouth, that he had these like horrible blisters that would pop and wasps would come out. AI art just couldn't get that one. But yeah, Dr. Wasp, of course, is a loving homage to Blizzard, what's his name? Hornet and Vulture from Crisis at Crusader Citadel. He's sort of a combination. We've got Minx and Ferret, who are loving homages to Marionette and Shrew. We've got Javelin, who's sort of my loving homage to Mercury Mercenary from Crisis at Crusader Citadel, and the mysterious Voice, who is the secret mastermind. And of course, that's my homage to Mocker. So yes, the Terrors were basically a loving homage to the Crushers from Crisis at Crusader Citadel. And they are the first supervillain group that the world becomes aware of. Then we just basically, I took things that were, everything else in here is pretty much things that were mentioned in Wretched Vigilantes that I expanded upon, you know. So like, you know, Miguel and like the little news things and stuff like that mentioned characters or stuff like that. And so I expanded on them. So these are all characters that were mentioned somewhere in Wretched Vigilantes, but didn't have write-ups. So I wrote them up. So I've got like the Butcher, Enchantress, Frostbite, Meow, Graviton. We have Killjoy, who is Kid Sidekick / the Owl's brother, who everybody thinks is dead. This is another one that AI could not get right. This is the closest to what I see in my head when I think of Killjoy, but it looks like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. So yeah, this is another one I could not get right. But basically, he's the Joker. So, you know, if the Owl is Batman, or basically Robin grown up, Killjoy, who is his brother, who we think is dead, turns out is not dead based upon an idea that Miguel put in, is the Joker. So I wanted him to look like the Joker without looking like the Joker. The closest AI art could get is Doc Brown. So yeah, real life artist out there, you still, I don't think, have to worry about AI art just yet. Then we have Mindbender, who is mentioned in Wretched Vigilantes. Apparently somebody said, you might be careful with this name because there's a Dr. Mindbender in G.I. Joe and Hasbro might sue you. And I was like, dude, I would love it if Hasbro sued me. Think of the free press. But no, Mindbender is another name you can't copyright. So yeah, sorry. Miss Mischief, again, this is just a character that was mentioned in, but never got, you know, a write-up. So Mistress Mayhem, the Monarch, Oedipus Rex, the Playwright, Cyclone, the Serpent, Shadow Strike, Shockwave. If you go through Wretched Vigilantes, you will see these guys all mentioned somewhere, and I gave them a team. Then we have the Crusade. If you remember on the back of Wretched Vigilantes, we have Empowered Girl. You have that picture of Charm with her titties all out. And then we've got Empowered Girl. So I decided Empowered Girl was part of a short-lived supergroup called the Crusade. Not my loving homage to the Crusaders. They show up someplace else. But, you know, this sort of this media-created super team all based upon influencers who might or might not have power. So we have Empowered Girl, who, as you know, was a very, very large girl who was mysteriously killed. And that comes up later. And then we have her team. We have Imagine Dragon, who's a VTuber, who we've got Pride. We've got Switch, which I tried to make these guys all just, you know, those whole fake YouTuber wokers, just, you know, influencers. Like, what? Imagine a super team made up of those people. How just would they be? Then we have the Wardens, who's mentioned in Wretched Darkness and in Wretched New Flesh. So I basically just add them to the world of the superheroes. Then we have the Defenders, who was the very first superhero team that fought the Terrors. Again, these are just characters I made up or were mentioned or were from other games that I fit into the storyline. Then, of course, we have the heroes that were mentioned in Wretched Vigilantes but never got love. We've got Kostos Kalestis, our girl Charm. Charm, you know, is mentioned, and it says that she's dead. but it turned out Charm isn't dead. Charm is unbelievably super lucky, like so lucky it borders on the ranks of physics bending. So yeah, she's in there, and this is a more of an expanded version of her. You know, we mentioned secretly the Edge has a list of like 5 super people on the Earth that she's actually afraid of. Tag being one of them because she doesn't know how powerful Tag actually is, and Charm being one of them because her luck would just be like, you know, this woman's powers actually bend the laws of probability. So we've got her. We've got this guy who's mentioned in but never got a write-up. And then we did this, if you remember, we did this live when Wretched Vigilantes first came out. We did the can you make Spider-Man in Wretched Vigilantes as is? Turned out we could, so here's the write-up on him. Here is a revised write-up of Edge, including all, I mean, she gets like 3 or 4 pages here of just, you know, she is the biggie that, you know, if there is a big bad guy in Wretched Vigilantes in this one, it's Edge. She is the spider at the center of the web. Everything that happens in Vigilantes and in this is sort of because of her manipulating things. And we really get into that in this. How many pages does she end up being? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. And then I've just got pages of some, you know, random stuff, revolting developments, I call this. I break it out into different things. You roll on these tables, you come up with new ways to make the lives of your player characters that much worse. And now, spoilers, I have 2 adventures. The first adventure is called Are You an Empowered Girl? It deals with the death of Empowered Girl and the anniversary of her death, and how the production company that sponsored Empowered Girl wants to honor her death by doing a brand new, contest where somebody can be the next new Empowered Girl, and they're trying to restart the crusade, and they're trying to get attention. I had to look up hotels in Texas. So I always love it when, if I'm writing something, it gives me a chance to actually connect it to the real world. So yeah, and then the contestants, what the adventure is, why the characters might be at basically a superpowered beauty contest, you know, secretly what's going on, including the arrival of a villain called Dr. Havoc, who's also mentioned in Wretched Vigilantes but didn't have a write-up. And then finally, of course, who killed Empowered Girl? And that's her. That's Empowered Girl's killer. AI art does not want to do blood for some reason, but it'll do red paint. And red paint looks a lot like blood. So this is our killer. This is who killed. Spoilers: who killed Empowered Girl? As to who this individual is, you'll just have to buy this and read the adventure. And then, because we warned you it was coming over and over and over again, the unofficial mascots of Wretched Vigilantes, the dyslexic duo created by myself and Sylvia several months ago, get their own adventure. It's right. It's called Day of the Dyslexic Duo. I looked up the weirdest thing I could think of, like it's based in one of the city with the weirdest name in all of the United States. It features something just totally bizarre. Like what's the last thing you'd expect anybody to ever rob? So basically, the dyslexic duo are, because they're, you know, dyslexic, robbing a spelling bee. They're robbing a spelling bee. And of course, in typical dyslexic duo fashion, our 2 ne'er-do-wells, the unofficial mascots of this project of mine. Things do not go as the plan when they try and rob the spelling bee. And just to let you know, I looked up where the World Spelling Bee is held every year, and turns out it's held in Texas. So, yeah. Oh no, it's in Maryland. I'm sorry. Did I say Texas? Yes, it's in Maryland. The spelling capital of the world, Oxon, Maryland, is where the World Spelling Bee is held every year. The annual prize is anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. So yeah, their plan is to, spoilers, kidnap the judge and hold her for ransom, since they know there's a $60,000 prize, and whoever robs the spelling bee. But here's this giant novelty check for $60,000. And we have the write-up of the dyslexic duo, including the names we've given them. And here's one of the huge, editing mistakes. So here's our unofficial mascots. If Wretched Vigilantes has 2 unofficial mascots, I know a lot of people think it's our girl Tag, but no, it's these 2. These are the unofficial mascots of the Wretched Vigilantes world, because they're the outsiders looking in. These 2 aliens / just dyslexic / just totally bumbling supervillains who are trying so hard to make sense of this bizarre world that they live in. So there it is. I just pretty much told you who it is who is writing these, and so there's the answer. If you're wondering who the author of Wretched Vigilantes and Bad Guys Always Lose and Good Guys Never Win and whatever else I create for this world is, who is the author, who is the unofficial mascot, it's these 2. It's the dyslexic duo. They are the people who, despite the fact just being dyslexic, bumbling, wonderful creations, are the writers. And then, of course, we have the references and the footnotes and the end and all this wonderful AI art. Now, I would rather have used real art, but my normal pet artist is on sabbatical because he had a baby. So, and I don't know any other artists who will work for ice cream. So if you are an artist and want to do some wretched superhero villain art for the next one and is willing to work unbelievably cheap, like, for a box of macaroni, let me know. I think AI got most of them right between me and Miguel. Some of these I did, some of these Miguel did. Some of them it didn't get right at all. But for the most part, I think they're okay. I still don't think AI art will ever replace real people, because I tried for hours on some of these and it still did not match what I saw in my head. And others, it got like first try, it got right. Like this one, and it was like the most vague. It was weird because like the vaguer the prompts, the more close to what I saw in my head. Or I was just like, yeah, that's it. But the more specific prompts I get, like with Dr. Wasp, it just got totally wrong. Like this guy, that doesn't look anything like what I wanted him to look like. But close enough, I was like, sure, why not? She, meow, came out exactly the way I wanted her to look like, though I'm not sure why she has purple skin. That one was perfect, like first try. Cyclone, first try. This one, never got it right. I had this image in my head for the playwright of a guy holding a giant novelty quill and writing it like, some guy from Batman 66, and doing all these Batman 66 themed crimes around, playwriting and Broadway and stuff like that. It couldn't get that right. No matter how many times it couldn't get, giant novelty quill Batman 66, because that's what I pictured. That one it got right, but basically he's just a ripoff of the Kingpin. Couldn't do the crown right. Could not do the crown right. I guess Miguel did this one, and it's a crown, but I was thinking like a thin gold diadem on his throne. So yeah, this one it couldn't get right because AI art hates hands and weapons. This one definitely still does not look like what I picture in my head. This one, yeah, that almost looks like a real person. Couldn't get this one right because AI art hates hands and weapons. Don't know why it made her look like this. They're identical twins. They should have looked exactly the same. This one could not get it right at all. Just you can see, I tried multiple times to get the image, but you can see Miguel tried, and it just looks like this guy's got gravel stuck to his flesh. No bugs coming out of him. So and there you go. There it is. Bad guys always lose. So the good, hey, these guys gave me permission to write a product and then they published it for me. That's good. It expands upon the Wretched Vigilantes world. It's a great way to see if people want me to create more in this world or if it's just a failed experiment. Either way, it allowed me to get all these ideas out and really play with this, paint palette that Miguel and Sylvia gave us with the Wretched Vigilante setting and the Wretched universe. I mean, let's face it, Wretched is not perfect by all means as a role-playing system, but it's a good, starter to play with. It's a good building blocks. It's a sort of, it's very GURPS-like without being GURPS, and just it's a good, generic enough system that you can play with. I mean, there's still things I would change and fix. I mean, I revised so many things writing this, but still, I say that it's good. The bad, my spelling, my editing, Miguel's editing. Now it's probably bad, and the ugly. I don't know if there's anything outright ugly about this. Anything I would be like, oh my God, I would never do this again. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. The whole Hammetville's in Texas thing. Should have done more of these. It's an experiment. This is just wasted space. There's an ugly. It's this. Stop using black, Miguel. That's probably the only ugly. Is this. Other than that, if I saw this in the store printed out, I'd pay 10, 12, 15 bucks for it. Even 20. Did Wretched Vigilantes need an expansion? I don't know. People usually want to see more villains and more NPCs and more explorations of the world. So maybe. Do you want to see another one? I'm working on the second one, but you tell me. Is that something you want to see? Have you had a chance to pick it up yet? If not, there's a link down below. Run, don't walk to your nearest online retailer and pick this up. I think it's $9 right now for the PDF, and hopefully a POD will be available in about 2 weeks. And hopefully you all pick that up because it's a great book. I had a lot of fun working on it. I hope you have a lot of fun reading it. Buy my merch. Until next time, you know who this is. It's the OGGM asking you to like, share, subscribe. Until then, I'll talk to you all later here in sunny Hammetville, Texas. Now get out of my Texas. That made no sense. I'll talk to you later.